So in this video, you found domain and range already if I give you a set of ordered pairs, a list of ordered pairs, or if I give you a mapping diagram. So now on this one, we're going to use domain and range when we're talking about graphs. Now, to start here, this is kind of a review because you had some of these examples on the last lesson. But as you see here on these graphs, these are all just little dots, and the dots represent just ordered pairs, right? So all you're going to do here is list out your domain and range from these ordered pairs. So for example, like this point right here is the ordered pair 1 and 2, okay? And then you have all these ordered pairs. So right now, the domain for this dot, let's see here, for each one of these dots, the domain, I've got 1 for x, I've got a 2 for x, I've got a 3 for x, a 4 for x, a 5 for x, and a 6 for x. So my domain is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, that's my domain. The range is my y values again. So as I'm looking at the y values here, this first dot has a y value of 2. This has a dot of a y value of 1, y value of 2, 3, 4, and 7. Okay, so my range, and it doesn't have to be in numerical order. You can just list them as you're going here. 2, 1, 2. And then I've got 3, 4, and 7. Okay, so you can identify domain and range from dots on a graph as we're looking here. So let's look at this second example quickly here. The domain for this guy is going to be 1, 3, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now, you don't have to write repeats down there if you don't want to. You can either way. Either way, I will accept it. Okay, and then the range is the y values. Okay, so on the y values, I've got a 1, I've got a 2, I've got 4, I've got 6, I've got a 6, I've got another 4, and then I have a 1. Okay, so you can see here domain and range on a graph from ordered pairs from dots on a graph, points on a graph. Okay, so now domain and range from an actual line or a curve, and you'll see that these are slightly different. Okay, now you'll notice as you look here at this graph on number 5, you'll see that no longer we have points. Now we have a line, and it has arrows on the end. Okay, so they're asking for domain and range on this, and they want to know on the x-axis where does this line or curve go to and from, and then on the y-axis where does it go to and from. So as I'm looking at this, kind of a simple way to think of this is domain we're going to think I want to go how far left does the graph go, and then we're going to put these symbols in here on every one of these guys. Okay, so the symbol means that the domain on the x-axis is between these two numbers. That's what that's going to stand for. Okay, so I go between those two numbers, and then I want to know how far right it goes. And the range is how low it is, or the bottom, how low it is to how high it goes. Okay, so as you're going to see now, again, as I look at this graph, on this graph, if I were to put a dot in here, let's see here. I'll use this. Let's say I put a dot right there. Okay. And you can't see that one very well, so I'm going to do that again. And we'll do it with a pencil this time. It might be easier to see. All right, so if I put a dot right there, can you tell me what ordered pair that is? Well, it's really hard because it's in the middle of the square, which means it's a decimal. Okay, so we're not going to be able to, be able to write out, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 like before. On this one, we're going to have to kind of put a range, put a wide array from a start to a finish line. Okay, and now if you also remember this arrow here, this arrow means that that line goes on forever and ever and ever and ever. So if I were to continue that line, and as I'm going through here, if I were to continue that line, I'd keep going and going and going and going. And what number is that going to be? How far left that is? Well, it's way, way, way out there. Okay? So you think, okay, well, what's the smallest number ever? Well, that's a specific number that we call negative infinity. Okay? So as we're going through here and you see this, if you have arrows on your graph, a lot of times it's going to be either positive infinity or negative infinity. And I'm going to show you how to write that here as we zoom back out. Okay, so for the domain, I want to know how far left. This will be left. This will be how far right. This will be how the bottom of it. How low does it go? How high does it go? Okay, so as I'm looking at this graph, this line's going to keep going on and on and on and on forever. Way, way out here. Okay, way out here. This number out here, we don't have an actual number what that is. We call that negative infinity. And infinity is a sidewards 8, essentially. Okay, so if I continue for the x-axis, I'm going to follow the arrow. I keep going, keep going, keep going. Remember, that arrow means it keeps going. I'm still going to go. I'm still going to go way out here. Again, I don't know what number that is. So since I don't know what number that is, we write that as positive infinity. Okay? So that's on the x-axis. That's from left to right. Okay, so now I want to go bottom to top. So as I'm looking at this thing, as I follow this line, how low is it? Like this number way out here, how low is that out there? Well, I don't know what number that is. So because I don't know what number that is, we're going to make that, since it's low, we're going to make that negative infinity. And then if I follow it above, I want to know how tall is the graph. So when I follow this guy all the way up here, again, I don't know what number this is. So this is going to be positive infinity because it's in the positive direction. And you just figured out your domain and range. Okay, so let's take a look here at the next example, example number 6. All right, so example number 6, as I'm looking here. Okay, so this one has a little bit different shape to it. Okay, this one has a V shape. So as I'm looking here at this, again, this arrow means it's going to keep going this way. This arrow means it's going to keep going this way. And you'll notice it comes down and it stops, and then it goes back up to the top. Okay, so how far left, okay, how far left does this thing go? Well, again, if I follow, here's this line in this case, this side of the V. If I follow it, that arrow means keeps going, keeps going. What number is this way out here? That happens to be negative infinity. Okay, so it goes from negative infinity. And then if I go to the right side now, going all the way up here to the right side, if I kept going, kept going, kept going, what number is this way out here to the right? That's positive infinity. Essentially, guys, think of this. If it goes off the graph, if that arrow is going to go off the graph, you're either going to use positive infinity or negative infinity. Okay, now the range. How high and how low does it go? Okay, so if you think about this, let's take a look at how high it is. It has both arrows here. So both of these things are going to keep going. How tall? How tall is that V going to get? We don't know how tall that V is going to get. So it's going to be positive infinity. That's going to be on the, that's how the top part of it, or how high it's going to go. Okay. Now, how low does this graph go? If I follow this graph, okay, I come down to the bottom. Does it go lower than this point right here on the y-axis? No, because then it goes back up, doesn't it? It never goes below that point. Okay, well, that point on the y-axis is right here, and that's at 0. So it goes from 0 to infinity. That's the case where you use a number. Okay, so that's as low as it goes. It goes as low as 0, and then it goes back up. It doesn't go below 0. Okay, so let's take a look now at this last example. This last example is a lot different. Notice, do you see any arrows in this one? No, you don't. So this one's going to go from a number to a number, and a number to a number. So remember, how far left does that circle go? How far right does that circle go? What's the bottom of the circle? What's the top of the circle? Okay, so as I'm looking at this, and I'm going to draw this in blue, I'm going to figure out, okay, how far left does this circle go? I'm going to trace this. That's as far left as it goes. Well, what is that on the x-axis? This is right here, -1. So that's how far left that circle goes. That circle does not go farther left than -1. Okay, so I'm going to go to the right side now. This is the line as far right as it goes. Well, how far is that? That's at +3. So +3. So on the x-axis, the domain, it goes from -1 to +3. Okay, there's no infinities on this one because there's no arrows at all. Okay, so now on the range, what's the bottom? How low does it go? Well, if I go here, follow the red part here, underline that part, that red line is at the line of 0. So the bottom is at 0, and the top is at 4, because that's how high it goes. Okay, so in this case, it gives you two numbers for domain and range in this case. Okay, so you're able to find domain and range of graphs. So make sure you, in Class Kick, you go through and complete your examples.